So what exactly is Black Lives Matter looking to achieve with these confrontations? Mark Thiessen is a Fox News contributor and former chief presidential speechwriter under President George W. Bush. Mark Hanna is a former Obama campaign aide and adjunct professor of media studies at the New School. Welcome to you both, Marks.
Thank you,
Good to see you tonight.
Good to see you.
Good to be with you, Shannon.
All right, Thiessen, I'll start with you. Are they accomplishing their objective? Because we're talking about them. They're getting a lot of attention. And isn't that what they want to do? Shine a spotlight on the issues they care most about.
They are. They are getting a lot of attention, but I don't think they're persuading a lot of people. I don't think that people are persuaded by smash mouth tactics and by people stealing microphones and disrupting events. I mean, in Wisconsin, when people wonder why Scott Walker won his recall election, it was because the over-the tactics of the left-wing activists who went and interrupted all of his events. So they're not convincing a lot of people. But on the other hand, I think I hope they show up at a lot more Republican events, because it's a great opportunity for Republicans to respond the way Jeb Bush did, which is to respond with empathy and compassion and explain their stand on the issue. So I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing for the GOP.
Well, Hannah, let me ask you,
Sure.
When these folks show up and there is a lot of shouting, and even at the Bernie Sanders event, it was unclear exactly what they wanted to say or what they hoped to accomplish other than stopping him from speaking. And some of these events, do they risk hurting themselves as a movement by not being able to, once they do gain control, articulate exactly what it is that they want from these candidates?
Yeah, I think there's a saying in politics, Shannon, that you can't sort of antagonize people and persuade them at the same time. So the Black Lives Matter protesters need to be very careful. I will say that people criticize the younger generation for being politically disengaged. No one can call these protesters that you're looking at right now on the screen apathetic. And I want to say something to what Mark Thiessen about Jeb Bush handling this with empathy. The answer that Jeb Bush came up with when asked about racial injustice had to do with people don't trust institutions. They need to trust institutions again. That's a pretty mealy-mouthed and sort of flat-footed answer. It's not the stuff of great, inspirational leadership about trusting institutions. So I don't think he's really connecting with these protesters, and somebody needs to, whether it's Republican or Democrat, and speak to their specific issues and also the broader societal problems and connect it with mainstream public policy solutions.
Well, Mark Hanna, let me ask you, though, do you give him any credit for the fact that apparently his campaign knew ahead of time that these folks would be there, and he reached out, tried to offer them some time to meet together to have some kind of discussion, and he didn't leave the room when that started. If you watch the raw video, he was there for a couple of minutes, and some approached him and appeared to be with this group, did reach out. He reached out to shake their hand, and apparently that happened. I mean, is his willingness to at least stay there and hear them out, do you give him any points for that?
I do indeed. Yeah, I give him great credit for that and for meeting with these protesters. Hillary Clinton met with the Black Lives Matter protesters up in New Hampshire earlier this week, and I think Jeb Bush sort of gave them the same courtesy. I don't think, though, I'll say again, I don't think he's connecting, and that's going to be a big problem at the end of the day.
Well, and Thiessen, you mentioned that this could be a good opportunity for any candidate who can sort of have this conversation and show some compassion, or at least have some policies that may be directed at the concerns of these specific individuals. So is it a potential win for those, if these folks show up?
Well, I think it's a great golden opportunity for Republicans. I mean, first of all, Jeb Bush did reach out to them, met with them, answered their questions, and they still just tried to disrupt his event. So I think that shows pretty bad form. But I think these are opportunities for Republicans. What Republicans need to do is to respond with empathy, and to turn the debate and to make the case that, look, it's the Democratic policies of the last 7 years that have left the vulnerable citizens in our country in the worst state that they've been in a generation. We have a 31% young black unemployment rate, which is double the white unemployment rate. Stagnant mobility, which is a Republican issue, dealing with stagnant mobility, that's a civil rights issue. They should say it's unacceptable that African Americans are stuck in communities trapped in poverty and violence, and that we will fight for them, as Ben Carson said last night, we'll fight for them whether they vote for us or not. And they may not vote for Republicans, but the persuadables who are watching will look at that and say, those are people who we want to give a chance to solve these problems.
I vote for Mark Thiessen in 2016.
Wow! I am writing that on my calendar.
Seriously, though, Mark is. Look, I don't.
We'll make it bipartisan.
I don't, honestly, I don't think that argument convinces a lot of Americans is the problem, but I do think that, look, people need to be, the Republican candidates need to be as articulate as Mark just was in making that case. I think Ben Carson made some inroads this past week up in Harlem. But look, I've produced political events for 3 presidential campaigns. Political protests are a fact of life in the campaign world. They're as American as apple pie. They're going to happen. So instead of sort of pushing back on this, the candidates need to find a way to address these grievances, whether you agree with them or you think they're legitimate or not, because this is democracy in action.
Yeah, when you have these public events, unless they are extremely controlled, and I won't mention any names, these things are going to happen. So you do need to be prepared and have an answer for them. I want to play a little bit of Martin O'Malley, former governor of Maryland, of course running as a Democrat, part of what he had to say when confronted with this conversation.
Every life matters, and that is why this issue is so important. Black lives matter, white lives matter, all lives matter.
Yeah, he was getting booed there, and he later on apologized for kind of the way that came out, and being criticized for saying that he shouldn't have said all lives matter, every life matters, or white lives matter. That he should have stayed strictly on only the Black Lives Matter message, and that by diluting it, he was somehow disrespecting them.
Yeah, but he's a poster child of why this is such an opportunity for the Republican Party. I mean, Baltimore, the city of Baltimore, which we all saw in flames just a few months ago, is the laboratory of liberal social policy in the inner city. The Democrats have been in charge of Baltimore for 50 years, and the result is what we saw in Baltimore. And so Martin O'Malley is the guy who presided over that, along with the other Democrats in Maryland. And so Republicans need to say, look, the Democrats a war on poverty 50 years ago, and they reduced poverty from 14.7% to 14.5%. We've got people living in inner cities without jobs, a 31% black youth unemployment rate. Their policies are not working, and Republicans have better alternatives to address the problems of poverty and the lack of mobility in this country. So I think that every Republican who has a Black Lives Matter protest needs to turn this into an opportunity to take on the liberal welfare state and the failure of the war on poverty and say this is a result of Democratic policy.
Shannon, can I just get in?
Yes, I would like to give the final quick word to the Mark Thiessen 2016 campaign director and advisor, Professor Hanna.
Chief strategist. Thank you. Look, it's ridiculous. It's ludicrous to think that these protests or the plight of a lot of the black community is a result of liberal policies. This isn't liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. What it is it's a product of a criminal justice system that institutionally discriminates against black people. And frankly, a lot of the big thinking that's happened here has come out of the Republican Party. The push for criminal justice reform is happening in certain wings of the Republican Party. It's just not going to come to the fore, unfortunately, because it doesn't stoke the base. It doesn't appeal to the extremist elements of the Republican Party that you need to do, unfortunately, in a primary campaign. So if Mark's message about, and not just sort of scapegoating or pointing the finger at liberals, if you pivot that to an actual affirmative, positive message of criminal justice reform, I think Republicans could make some headway on this matter.
All right, well, every candidate out there, Republican and Democrat, needs to be prepared because you know it's coming. There's no excuse now. All right, Mark and Mark, thank you both.
Thanks, Shannon.